People, from the other day, I look on how most sporting events, how them are going, how the thing play out. Sometime during game, sometime before game, sometime after a game. I look on the whole thing and I say, boy, like politics they behind the sport more than a just sport, and no fun they behind it no more. It's politics. So I'm going to sub up and start on like a research thing. I'm going to go find an article. It's about the power and politics of sports. Why games aren't just games anymore. It reads, sports used to be simple. Go to games, play games, have fun, be entertained. Now it's so much more. Every level of sports, from your local youth league straight up to the pros, has become big business that generates big money and big influence. On Capitol Hill, that sports business blatantly wields its power to get what it wants and often succeeds. In the justice system, sports figures are perhaps more than ever at the center of major criminal investigations because they once felt invincible, but are no more. On the field, the sports world produces heroes that are discussed around the dinner table in nearly every part of our country. With a searing fervor otherwise safe for debating politics or religion. In the Olympic world, sports help give nations credibility and also can spark international conflict. For good and bad, the sport world is bigger and more powerful than ever, with athletes wielding more and more influence over our culture and our politics. The power of the athlete. When top athletes talk, why do the public listen so closely? It's because in many cases they have more power than politicians. Like Vibes Cartel as a musician have more influence than Andrew Wunis, who the Prime Minister of Jamaica. When the University of Missouri football team went on strike to protest the way the university handled racial tension on campus, it led to the ouster of the university president. When several members of the St. Louis Rams made the hands up, don't shoot gesture to show their solidarity with people protesting the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, it was the talk of the internet. When LeBron James and his Miami Heat teammates wore black hoodies to show their support for slain Florida teenager Trayvon Martin, it spurred countless dinner time conversation about whether athletes should even involve themselves in serious issues. Okay, I protest the death of a black youth, say white America get pan him case. Alright. It spurred. Should athletes keep their focus on the playing field, or do they have a duty to speak out on social issues because so many people look up to them? When Mohammed bin Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar spoke out about Donald Trump's idea to ban all Muslims from entry into the United States, why did it make an impact? Or when Russia enacted an anti-gay law before the 2014 Sochi Winter Games, why did so many Olympic athletes refuse to talk about the politics of it, saying sports and politics should remain private? What exactly is the duty of the athlete in those situations? Alright. FIFA. The FIFA take down corruption in soccer and international sports. One morning in May in Zurich, Swiss law enforcement raided a 5-star lakeside hotel and arrested some of the world's most powerful officials in worldwide soccer. Those arrests mark the beginning of perhaps the biggest takedown in the history of sports, with FIFA, soccer's global governing body, at the center of it all, and United States federal prosecutors leading the charge to clean up the sports. How did those FIFA officials reign without much or any impunity for so many years? How did the International Olympic Committee allow global soccer to get to this point of such widespread corruption that by the end of 2015, more than 40 officials in the sport pleaded guilty or were arrested for crimes that included receiving bribes and kickbacks? Why was the United States government the one to finally step in to say enough? Can leadership of international sports and it makes sense, right? That's what, but where so much money is to be made in the face of so little oversight ever be trusted? Okay. Can leadership in international sport where so money is to be made in the face of little oversight ever be trusted? Okay, that makes sense, right? That's all. Alright. The fantasy football feud. The debate over DraftKings and FanDuel. Fantasy league betting has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, but will it soon be extinct? Online daily fantasy sports sites like DraftKings and FanDuel are commanding attention now, and it's nearly impossible to watch sports on television or go to a sporting event for that matter without seeing their ads. Yet those days might be coming to an end. Those sites and ones like them are at the center of an ongoing sizzling public policy debate that pits whether internet fantasy league gambling is a game of chance or a game of skill. If it's a game of chance, then the government would have to step in to regulate it or ban it outright. We discussed the future of fantasy leagues and whether they should be legal. Also, does that type of gambling dehumanize the athletes who feel like disposable pawns in that money-making game? Should fans even care? Former U.S. soccer captain and current ESPN analyst Julie Foudy on women's sports. The United States women's national soccer team sued FIFA and the Canadian Soccer Association, claiming discrimination because the 2015 Women's World Cup had only artificial turf fields instead of grass ones, which is the preferred surface for the game. The team asks, the Men's World Cup is played on grass and will be for the foreseeable future, so why do the women have to play on inferior surface? The women's team backed down from their case as FIFA basically ran out the clock. Now, do these women, whose World Cup winning final game was the most watched soccer game in United States history, have the power to demand better fields? Or will women in sports always find themselves stuck behind men? For example, why are there only 37 female athletic directors in Division I sports, while 276 are men? Why do women pro leagues still struggle? If Title IX can't fix this inequality, is there anything else Congress or anyone or any institution for that matter can do to bridge the gap? Julie Foudy is a Stanford graduate, is one of the most accomplished women in soccer history in the United States history. For years, have been active in pursuing for gender equality in sports. She is a former captain of the United States women's national team and a former president of the Women's Sports Federation, where she focused on Title IX, childhood obesity, and athletes' rights. During her 17-year tenure with the national team, she won 2 FIFA Women's World Cup titles, 2 Olympic gold medals. Now she's a reporter and analyst for ESPN, ABC, and ESPNW. Life as a sports reporter, where athletes and issues collide. Despite what you see in the movies, being a sports writer is much more than just covering games and traveling to cool places. Sure, there are assignments like covering World Cup in Brazil, writing about NASCAR race in Japan, and reporting about Olympics held in far-off places like China, Australia, Russia. These days, though, the job requirements stretches far beyond those event-related assignments, and delve much deeper than the X and O's. Sports writers at news organizations like the New York Times must have investigative reporting skills and knowledge of global politics. They must be comfortable writing about domestic violence, gender inequality, brain injuries, and doping, and be able to report in Iraq during a war or report from a Manhattan firehouse in the aftermath of 9/11. We discuss journalism how it has changed and what it's like to be a woman covering sports. The Brazil 2016 Olympics global showcase our financial scam. The Olympics will be held. The Olympics was held in Rio de Janeiro, where protesters in Brazil questioned why the country would spend money on sporting events when that cash was needed elsewhere, such as education, medical facilities, the poor. Yet the International Olympic Committee chose Rio as a host anyway. The AOC insisted with blinders on bringing the Olympics to South America for the first time. We discussed how and why that happened. Why do countries want to host the Olympics when it often leaves behind white elephant stadiums and huge debt and fosters corruption? Why did Russian President Vladimir Putin push so hard to host the Sochi Games, then invade Ukraine just a few days later? Why did a country like Brazil want the Summer Games when it has so many other seemingly more important things to worry about? And what will it do now as the games approach and is in so much political turmoil? When China hosted the 2008 Beijing Games, winning gold medals became a national obsession as their athletes were tasked to win, sometimes at any cost. China wanted to prove the strength of its country on a global stage. Why do sports offer such an enticing venue for countries to show off? The concussion crisis with former World Wrestling Entertainer wrestler, WWE wrestler Chris Nowinski. 20 years and more than 100 pounds ago, Ryan Hoffman was a standout lineman for the University of North Carolina football team. Then one of the top teams in the country in early 2015, though he was homeless, struggling with mental issues and illness and substance abuse and alcoholism. He blamed his troubles on football, that the repetitive hits to the head he sustained playing the sport had damaged his brain. In late 2015, Hoffman was dead, killed when he rode his bike into oncoming traffic on a unlit highway. With only $13 to his name. In this session, we ask, who failed Ryan Hoffman? What responsibility do universities and governments have in protecting athletes, both adults and children, from harm on the playing field, especially when it comes to concussions? Who really has the power in the struggle between the sports of football and the safety of its players? The downfall of Lance Armstrong with whistleblower Betsy Andrew, wife of Andrew Armstrong, ex-teammate. In Lance Armstrong's final days as nearly universal beloved sports icon, he and his lobbyists tried their best to topple the United States Anti-Doping Agency, which was the quasi-governmental organization that would eventually make public his lifetime of lies and doping. We discuss how Armstrong wielded his political power and why politicians were eager to support him. We also look at the merits of a federal whistleblower case in Washington, of which Armstrong and his former team managers are defendants. The gist of the case: the United States Postal Service, which sponsored the cycling team, had an anti-doping clause in its team contract, so it wants Armstrong to give that money back. Stepping back, we take a look at how Armstrong became so powerful when he started out as just a bike rider. Political events at the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games are a time when many nations come together to celebrate athleticism and mental strength. The International Olympic Committee aims to promote sports competition and education free of any discrimination in a spirit of friendship, solidarity, and fair play. The Olympics are a time when supposedly political feuds are set aside. The IOC even promotes the concept of Olympic truce in its charter, a policy which was observed during the ancient Olympics. Despite the IOC's goal for international peace during the game, politics has disrupted the Olympics game throughout history, whether through boycotts, propaganda, or protests. Here are 7 instances of politics infiltrating the Olympic Games. Berlin 1936, as called the Nazi Olympics. Jesse Owens, you have a picture Jesse Owens on the podium after winning the gold medal for running, broad jump, long jump at the 1936 Berlin. Berlin was voted as the host for 1936 Olympic Games in 1931. When 1933 came around, however, the Nazi Party rose to power in Germany. Proposed boycotts of the Berlin Olympics rose in many Western countries, who were appalled by the Germans' racist policies and human rights violations. Still, 49 countries attended the Games in Berlin, the most countries to attend the Olympic Games so far then. The German government used the international spotlight as an opportunity to portray the country as a benign and progressive nation while also providing fuel for its Aryan superiority propaganda, the latter of which the IOC specifically prohibited. The IOC also required that the German government would accept qualified Jewish athletes on their team. As a result, Ellen Meyer represented Germany in women's fencing. Record-breaking American sprint and long jumper Jesse Owens, an African American, won 4 gold medals. Many consider that Owens single-handedly destroyed Germany's attempt at proving Aryan superiority. In London 1948, Germany and Japan were banned. They were not invited to take part in the first Olympic Games after World War II, which took place in 1948 in London. The Soviet Union was invited but refused to send a team. London, like many European cities, was still recovering from the war. The city had limited time to prepare for the Games and ultimately used already created sports and housing facilities for the competition. Wembley Stadium was the center of the events, hosting the opening ceremony, athletics event, and more. Allegedly German prisoners of war retained in the UK were used to construct Wembley Way, apart from the London Underground to the stadium. Mexico City, 1968. Brutal shooting and civil rights protests in America. American track medalist Tommy Smith sent out a picture, and John Carlos raised black glove fist at the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City. The 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico saw 2 major political events. 10 days before the opening ceremony of the Games, Mexican students staged a protest at Plaza of 3 Cultures, Plaza de las Tres Culturas, in the Tlatelolco neighborhood of Mexico. They opposed the use of government funding for the Olympic Games rather than for social programs. The Mexican army surrounded the plaza and opened fire, killing over 200 protesters and injuring more than 1,000, an atrocity which became known as the Tlatelolco Massacre. Additionally, forgive me for the spelling of the word, the Mexicans, Tatelolco Massacre. Additionally, American politics infiltrated the athletes' competition. U.S. sprinters Tommy Smith and John Carlos protested their country's treatment of black citizens during the men's 200-meter award ceremony. They took their first and third place podiums barefoot, and during the playing of the US national anthem raised a single black glove while bowing their heads. The American sprinter and second place Peter Norman from Australia wore human rights badges. Smith and Carlos were promptly banned by the International Olympic Committee and the US Olympic Committee. Munich 1972, Munich massacre. A Palestinian terrorist appears on a balcony in the Munich Olympic Village where members of the Israeli team were being held hostage. 1972, Summer Olympics in Munich, Germany. 1970 was marred by the Palestinian attack Israel's team. On September 5, 1972, 8 terrorists affiliated with the Black September organization sneaked into the Olympic Village and killed 2 members of the Israeli team. They took 9 other hostages, attempting to bargain for the release of 200 Palestinian prisoners. After a standoff with an inadequate German police force, the terrorists were able to arrange transportation for themselves and the hostage to a nearby airport. When the German police force failed at their ambush attempt, the terrorists killed the Israeli hostages. The police then killed 5 of the 8 Palestinian terrorists. 1 German police officer was killed. Montreal 1976. African countries boycott Olympics. A sign in Durban, South Africa in 1989 that states the beach is for whites only under Section 37 of the Durban Beach Bylaws. The languages are English, Afrikaans, and Zulu, the language of the black population group in the Durban area. Racism, segregation. During the apartheid era, it restricts use of the beach to members of the white race group in accordance with South Africa's racial segregation law at the time. Legislated apartheid ended in the early 1990s. Some 24 countries, mostly from Africa, boycotted the 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal after the IOC refused to ban New Zealand from the Games. New Zealand's national rugby team had toured South Africa, a country that had been banned from the Olympics since 1964 because of its apartheid policies. While the boycott did not succeed in banning New Zealand from the Games, it did have a significant financial and athletic effect on the Games. Most importantly, it brought worldwide attention to apartheid policy in South Africa. In fact, when the South African Springboks took their rugby tour in New Zealand in 1981, they were met with apartheid protests. Rio de Janeiro, 2016, Refugee Olympic team. Several thousand migrants from Slovenia, Bernese, walked towards Germany on October 25, 2015 in the European refugee crisis, EU migration, the picture. 10 refugee athletes were selected to compete in the first ever Refugee Olympic team for the Rio de Janeiro Summer Olympics. The IOC created this team to bring refugee crisis to the international forefront. Athletes originally from Syria, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo were chosen for the squad, and each athlete trained in a host country: Kenya, Belgium, Luxembourg, Brazil, or Germany. The athletes, judocas, distance runner, sprinter, and swimmer, enter the opening ceremony before host country Brazil carrying the flag. And people, even this show, see them first Refugee Olympic, they have in 2016. We see it again this year. I think them more this year. We have Syria and some of them other places that were them involved athletes from this year. So we can see where politics is more than just the sport right now. Politics control the sport. I could say Jamaica from where the man must say JFF and top of this and top of that, or the JDF this or the JFF that or JFF whatever. And them a jump on hype, but me know it long time. When countries lose in a sport, them can get money from them government budget. But these are small guys, Jamaica a small country. So they're not going to win, they're not nothing for gain. Now the people will advise them. Now advise them in a way where them can pick no good team and beat the big boys. And them people who work with the JFF, they never think that deep. They not have that. They not look that direction there. So Jamaica not no chance of really winning nothing, no team nothing. The individual events like track and field and them individual event, yes, because athletes go out there for them own personal thing. But the team them. We not look for it no time soon. Because we not do for our own thinking, we're being advised how to act as losers.